This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. Sefer Daniel, the Gemara tells us in Masechta Megillah that Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel wanted to reveal the Targum on the Nevi'im. And when he did, when he revealed the Targum on the Nevi'im, it says that Eretz Yisrael shook 400 amos by 400 amos. 400, right? Parsa by 400 parsa. And but ultimately he said that he's not doing it for his own honor, he's doing it for the honor of the Torah. Shelo yarbe machlokes b'Yisrael. He didn't want there to be machlokes, and therefore he gave the authoritative and definitive translation of the Nevi'im. But he was not allowed to give the Targum Yonatan ben Uziel on Ksuvim. Why? Because Sefer Daniel contains the Ketz HaYamin. It contains the date when the Geula, when Mashiach would come, and therefore Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel was not authorized to disclose the Targum on Sefer Daniel. And Sefer Daniel is not an easy Sefer to understand. A lot of it is written in Aramaic, and because in the language of Daniel it couches the exact date when Mashiach would come, so it's clouded in a lot of layers of mystery. And therefore it's not so easy to understand many parts of Sefer Daniel, but I want you to know that in the Sefer Chazon Lamoed, it brings down that in Greece, the custom was that they would actually lane Sefer Daniel during the 3 weeks. Why? Because it's the time that we are yearning for the coming of Mashiach, and therefore during the 3 weeks they used to lane Sefer Daniel in Greece.
Well, you know who wrote Sefer Daniel?
So, let's see. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. Let's begin on Perek Aleph. Let's begin with the beginning.
Are we learning out of the operating principle that a nevuah can have multiple meanings?
Yeah, well, whether Daniel was a Navi, that's also, the Gemara says he wasn't a Navi.
Okay, but whatever this Ruach HaKodesh was, do we work on the principle that it could mean one thing and it changes based on the...
In the Nevuah, the many layers of meaning.
Why wasn't he a Navi?
Why wasn't he? He wasn't.
Who was he then?
Well, let's find out. Let's find out. Who was he? Let's see. Let's see who he was. At the beginning of the Sefer Daniel, who was he? He wasn't anybody yet. Well, we'll have to see. Okay, so it's Perek Aleph, Pasuk Aleph. It sets the background in the following way. B'shna shalosh l'malchus Yehoyakim melech Yehuda. In the 3rd year of the reign of Yehoyakim, the king of Yehuda, Ba Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel Yerushalayim. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel, came to Yerushalayim. Vayatzar oleha, and he set siege to the city. Now, if anyone's familiar with Nevi'im, if you look in Sefer Malachim, Beis, the 23rd and 24th chapters, there is no such person, Yehoyakim. No such person.
Wasn't he a king?
That's what he said.
That wasn't his name. There was no such person. His name was Eliakim. His name was Eliakim. Where do you get the name Yehoyakim from?
Maybe it's a prince.
He's brought
Yeah, I'm telling you that there's no such person. There was no such person, Yehoyakim. His name was Eliakim. And in Paro Necho...
Malachim, it does say Yehoyakim.
Well, let's see what happened. What happened was when Paro Necho came and conquered Israel, he changed this individual whose name was Eliakim to Yehoyakim. Okay, and that was a very common thing. When somebody would conquer a country, so they would take their most important people and they would rename them. So this individual's name was Eliakim, and the Navi is setting the background for the story of Sefer Daniel, and that is it took place in the 3rd year of the reign of Yehoyakim. The problem, though, is the major problem that Chazal deal with is that if the pasuk is saying Nebuchadnezzar became the king, or at least he came to Eretz Yisrael and set siege in what year? In the 3rd year of the reign of Yehoyakim, which is simply not true. Not true. It wasn't the 3rd year. It was not the 3rd year. If you take a look in Rav Sadia Gaon, you have Rav Sadia Gaon?
Yeah.
So you should have it. Reish Samach Gimel in the Nevi'im is Rav Sadia Gaon. Rashi really raises the same point, but Rav Sadia Gaon spells it out very clearly. And he asks the following question that Chazal deal with, and that is, V'haloi loy melech Nebuchadnezzar ela b'shnas arba leYehoyakim. Nebuchadnezzar did not become king until the 4th year of the reign of Yehoyakim. So what's the Navi saying over here? It was the 3rd year, Shenemar, B'shana haravias leYehoyakim, hi hashana harishona leVuchanetzar. That was the 1st year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Now think about the following. Here the Navi is saying that Nebuchadnezzar came and conquered Eretz Yisrael in the 3rd year of Yehoyakim's reign. 1 second. Nebuchadnezzar is not even the king yet. Nebuchadnezzar didn't become the king until the 4th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. And it's not like the first thing Nebuchadnezzar did when he became king is, okay, my first plan A is go conquer Eretz Yisrael. It took him many, many years from the time he became king until he conquered Eretz Yisrael, because Chazal tell us in Nebuchadnezzar's 1st year, which we're saying is really the 4th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar conquers Nineveh. Nineveh became his capital. And then in the 2nd year of his reign, he conquers Yehoyakim. Here, take a look at Rav Sadia Gaon. How can we say that this was in fact the 3rd year when Nebuchadnezzar did not become king until the 4th year of the reign of Yehoyakim? You know what it means over here? What it means is not the 3rd year of the reign of Yehoyakim. The 3rd year of Yehoyakim's rebellion, Nebuchadnezzar attacked and set siege to Yerushalayim. It wasn't the 3rd year of Yehoyakim's reign, because in fact, what?
Why didn't it say so?
Okay, so
Navi says Shalosh.
So we'll have to see what the Navi means. But again, it doesn't mean the 3rd year of Yehoyakim's reign. It means the 3rd year of Yehoyakim's rebellion. So in other words, Nebuchadnezzar becomes king in the 4th year of Yehoyakim's reign. Shebishnas arba leYehoyakim melech Nebuchadnezzar. In the 4th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar became the king. V'kavash es Nineveh. He conquers Nineveh in the 4th year of Nebuchadnezzar's of Yehoyakim's reign. Uv'chamishis leYehoyakim kavshin Nebuchadnezzar leYehoyakim. In the 5th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar conquers Yehoyakim. Va'avdo Yehoyakim shalosh shanim. And then for the next 3 years. So let's get this. In the 5th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar conquers him. He then is his slave. Va'avdo Yehoyakim shalosh shanim. Yehoyakim serves Nebuchadnezzar for year 6, year 7, and year 8. Shenemar v'hilo Yehoyakim eved shalosh shanim.
Maintain the status of melech.
No, he was no longer an active king if he was serving him.
Yeah, it says Vishna Shalos.
Okay, 1 second.
It doesn't mean the marriage.
Well, no. Well, we have to see. We have to see. V'yashav, and then he went back. V'yimrod bo, and he rebelled in years what? 9, 10, and 11. Right? Va'avdai shishis u'shvius u'shminis. He served him in the 6th, 7th, and 8th years of Nebuchadnezzar. V'achar kach. And then afterwards, in other words, he served him, in the 6th, 7th, and 8th years of Yehoyakim's reign. In the 9th, and 10th, and 11th years of Yehoyakim's reign, he rebelled. No, of Yehoyakim's reign. Again, Yehoyakim, in the 4th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar became king, and he conquered Nineveh. In the 5th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Yehoyakim conquered, Nebuchadnezzar conquered Yehoyakim. Okay? So in the 4th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar became king. In the 5th year of Yehoyakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar conquers him. Yehoyakim then serves Nebuchadnezzar's year 6, 7, and 8. 6, 7, and 8, according to Rav Sadia Gaon. And then in years 9, 10, and 11,
He rebelled.
Yehoyakim rebels. So for 3 years
9, 10, and 11
of Yehoyakim's reign, Yehoyakim rebels against. Yeah, that's how the Rav Sadia
Why do
Gaon
you
reads
consider
it.
his reign keeps going on even if he's enslaved?
Only a slave. He was,
They pay tribute, he paid
a
taxes.
vassal state.
He paid taxes
He
to
was
him. When
like
he
a
says
puppet king.
Yeah, he was.
No, he
a
was
puppet
vassal
king and he
state.
paid
A
taxes to
puppet
him.
king. He
paid
paid
taxes
taxes,
to
but he
him.
was still the
Yeah.
He still was the leader of the...
honorary king.
So now, Rabbi Sai, now this story takes place b'shnas shalosh. It doesn't mean in the third year. It means at the end of the third year, which is now the
The
12th
revolution.
year of Yehoiakim's
Oh, the revolution.
reign.
Third
Now
year.
the question is, why is it called b'shnas shalosh Samachos Yehoiakim if in fact it's not his third year? It's really at the end of the 11th
Because it
year.
was something that he took out of Nebuchadnezzar. He was only a puppet king. The third year to his real malchus.
Ah,
when
so
he
right, very
rebelled.
good. L'chara, what the Navi is saying is that it's the third year of his malchus that he was not a king in conjunction with anybody else. This is the first time in Yehoiakim's career that he is his own independent melech. So you say, what about his first 3 years? His first couple of years, Paro Necho was the one who appointed him and was over him. Paro Necho was over him in the beginning of his reign. So that was not considered his own independent reign, not until Nebuchadnezzar came and conquered Eretz Yisrael, and then Yehoiakim rebels against Nebuchadnezzar, so now these are really the first 3 years of his own independent reign. Okay?
Doesn't it mean that in the third year of Yehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar conquered Yehoiakim?
Oh, he reconquers Yehoiakim, yeah.
It's reconquered Yehoiakim?
Yeah.
So he was his own king for 3 years, and then Nebuchadnezzar
That's
reconquered him?
correct, yeah. So this is the second time he's coming under the control of Nebuchadnezzar.
Not as being paying money. What's the definition of his being independent versus not? He was still in a position. He walked into the same room and sat on the same chair, whether it was year 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, but he was under the Babylonian Empire. He was under the umbrella of the
That he was of it or not of it.
I don't know. That's,
He wasn't a tribute king.
we have to see in Sefer Melachim. That we have to look in Sefer Melachim. But what we're beginning over here is that when we say the third year of the Malchus of Yehoiakim, it means the third year of the rebellion. Okay, and these 3 years were his 3 years of independent rulership. Okay, so good. You got the background.
One question, just in terms of dicta. The Pasuk says, "Bo Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel Yerushalayim." It doesn't say Li Yerushalayim or Al Yerushalayim. It says Yerushalayim. There's something missing.
It's the opposite. Is that when you do see a Li Yerushalayim, the Gemara many times make the drushim, but it's really technically not necessary. It's understandable from the word itself. When they add Yerushalayim or Yerushalayim,
I could say Al Yerushalayim.
It could have said, but really, you can give the meaning without saying that. Because I understand
Stop
it.
the spell.
Because you're
I
used
mean,
to
we
it.
understand it, but that was
Well,
spell.
another thing, how come he spelled that way?
Without a yud?
These drushes from all these letters.
Rabbi Glatstein.
I don't know. Let's continue.
Rabbi, it's the Rashi, it's a quote
Yeah.
from Malachim.
Yes.
As you explained.
Yeah. So we read it from Rav Sadia Gaon, which is basically the same thing as Rashi, just with very minor differences. Correct.
Alright.
Rashi, exactly. Whatever we just said is from Rashi and Rav Sadia Gaon.
Sadia is probably embellishing them.
Okay. Okay, so that's Pasuk Aleph. So again, this is the third year of Yehoiakim's rebellion. Nebuchadnezzar comes to Yerushalayim. Vayitain Hashem biyadai es Yehoiakim melech Yehuda. So now Hashem delivers into the hands of Yehoiakim, into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, Yehoiakim the king of Yehuda. And the Malbim points out that this happened immediately. In other words, Vayitain Hashem biyadai es Yehoiakim, Hashem delivered into his hand. It did not take long for Nebuchadnezzar to capture Yehoiakim. There was no fight put up. He just came in and he took Yehoiakim. So the Malbim points out.
It took 3 years to just walk into it.
The Malbim points out it was takeoff. This was immediately, and that's why the pasuk stresses Vayitain Hashem. This was the special Hashgachas Hashem. And so maybe you'll say the only way to understand that is because Yehoiakim sort of volunteered himself to Nebuchadnezzar, but that can't be, because the pasuk continues, not only did Nebuchadnezzar take Yehoiakim, but he also took Umixas Klei Beis Olekim. He took some of the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash. So obviously this is not something that Yehoiakim offered on his own.
Was there Yaakov and Melech Russia? Do we know that?
No.
He didn't
I believe so.
exist.
But,
He didn't exist.
but as he said, if why did it take 3 years for him to deliver him?
Who said it took years? He
Didn't
walked in
take-
and took them.
He
So
rebelled.
Why does
Why are we
it
talking
allow
about
him?
3 years?
He did not come to quench the rebellion until 3 years. And when he decided to come and put it down,
There for the 3 years.
It's not.
When he said I had enough.
Let's see.
Netzer showed up, and Hashem said, okay, you're here.
So it was the 3rd year. Well, it didn't
Okay.
take 3 years. Well, just-
Umixas klei beis halekim. He took some of the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash. Vayiviem eretz Shinar beis halekav. He brings it to the land of Shinar. Now, what's the land of Shinar? Bavel, right? Why is Rashi in Parshas Noach points out why is Bavel called Shinar? Because all of the bodies and everything that got destroyed in the Mabel shook down to there. Because Shinar is a valley, and everything sort of went in that direction. Beis Halekav. So he brings to the land of Shinar to the house of his God. Now, what does it mean to the house of his God? Rashi points out, right? Umixas klei beis halekim lakach. He took them. But he didn't take all of them. Some of them remained behind. Nebuchadnezzar was not successful in taking all of the vessels back to Bavel, and he brings it to Eretz Shinar, to the house of his God. Rashi points out, why to the house of his God? He wanted to gloat to his idols, so he brings all of the captives, and he brings all of the people, and all of the treasures. First he brings to the Beis Halekav, and then after that, V'yas HaKelim and all the vessels, Hevi Beis Oitzar Halekav, he brings to his idolatrous storehouse. Okay. Good? So that's the beginning of the story.
What's the time he destroyed the Beis Hamikdash?
Well, not yet. Because even after Yehoiakim, you have Yehoiachin, and then after you have Yehoiachin, no, not yet. He's not ready to destroy the Beis Hamikdash yet.
He took the Kalim, but he didn't destroy the building.
Yeah, he didn't take all the Kalim. This is like the pasuk points out. This is the special hashgachas Hashem. Vayitein Hashem biyadai. In other words, this was special hashgacha pratis that only Yehoiakim goes together with Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar takes the Kalim and the captives, and he brings it first to his Beis Halekav, and then to the Beis Oitzar Halekav.
Remember the Nebuchadnezzar says that they had 4 sons. They lived.
Who had 4 sons?
This is the first Beis Hamikdash?
Yeah, right. This is toward the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, right? Before.
Where are you reading? Who are you reading?
The Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, we're going to learn about the four boys. Well, let's see. Pasuk Gimel. Vayemer HaMelech la'Ashpenaz Rav Sarisav. The king, Nebuchadnezzar, says to Ashpenaz, yeah, the chief Enoch, the chief officer, Pasuk Gimel, Lahavi mi b'nei Yisrael, to bring Jews. He wants Jews. Bring me Jews. In other words, bring me some Jews from Eretz Yisrael. Umi zera hamelucha. Bring me royal blood, royal family. Now, this, according to the Malbim, this is not specifically referring to a description of what type of Jews. Bring me Jews. Mizar HaMelucha. And I also want to have
Jews,
people...
J-E-W or J-U-I-C?
Not orange juice.
J-E-W.
J-E-W-S. Not J-E-T-S.
Okay.
Okay? Jewish people of the faith, right? Fellow brothers, umizar hamelucha, royal seed, umin hapartimim.
The royal seed should also be Jewish.
Lav dafka. Now, what does partimim mean? In the Megillah.
So, like in the Megillah, we had
Right.
Partimim.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Like officers.
Officers.
Or
But if you look at Rav Sadia Gaon,
court personnel.
Rav Sadia Gaon says the word partimim is a conjunction of a compound word, peri tamim, whole fruit. In other words, he wants people without any mum, without any imperfections. Okay? And the pasuk says, Yeladim, bring me boys, bring me some boys, asher ein bohem kol Me'um. Or it's red mum, that don't have any imperfection, but it's spelled, the ksiv is ma'um. What's the difference between mum and ma'um? So the Malbim points out that the word ma'um comes from the word me'uma. What does me'uma mean?
Nothing.
Anything at all. In other words, a mum is, let's say, something where a real blemish. A big chisar, like a mum that passes a kohen to do the avoda. Ma'um means you don't even have the slightest scratch or the slightest imperfection, right? Like the Gemara says, you don't even have the hole of the lancet for not a flaw, right? V'tovei mare, they should be of goodly appearance. Umaskilim b'chol chachma. Maskilim, they are wise in all chachma. Now what's
Children?
Yoladim, young boys. Young boys. Now, v'yoidei das, they know das, umevine mada. And they understand mada. So now the question we have to ask is, what is chachma? What is chachma? What is das? And what is mada? So the Malbim says, the Malbim says as follows. The Malbim says there's a difference between chachma and das. Das is something that can be measured, or that has finite detection. In other words, das means 1 plus 1 equals 2, that's das. Something you could measure, something you could see with your own eyes, something that can be detected, something that there's a science behind. Right? It's something that you could calculate. Let's say astronomy, math, medicine. That is all das. Chachma, on the other hand, is not something that you could measure scientifically. What's chachma? Chachma is right and wrong. Right and wrong is not something that has a specific calculation or mathematical formula. It's a certain branch of wisdom that you could be very smart in terms of knowledge, but not have an idea what is correct and what is incorrect. That's chachma. What's mada? Mada is, there's a fine difference, the Malbim says, between das and mada. Okay, you ready for this? 1 plus 1 equals 2, that's das. 2 times 2 equals 4, that's another piece of das. 4 divided by 2 is 2, that's another piece of das. Right? 6 minus 4 equals 2, it's another piece of das. But when you put all the different formulas together, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and that all falls under the general category of mada. Mada is a general category for all the specific branches of specific information.
Ibn Ezra has a mada is שיוכלו להבין לאחרים יש בליבו ולדעתם כמו גם בדעתם מלך.
He's able to communicate the das.
ויש חכמים.
You have a good Rebbe, good teacher.
Oh, very nice. So Mr. Sherman is pointing out that Ibn Ezra says that Mada is, there are a lot of people that know things and they can't explain them.
Yeah.
Now usually we say that if you can't explain something, it means you don't understand it. But the Malbim himself writes on about Betzalel, it says Ulahayros nasan belibai, right? About Betzalel. What does it mean Ulahayros nasan belibai? The Malbim says that a person could be very bright, but there's a special talent to be able to explain something. And that's a talent that Betzalel had. So it's a special chachma to be able to convey information. So that Ibn Ezra learns Mavine Mada means not only do they have the information, but they're able to communicate it.
Also from the notion of das and mada. Mada is to give the other one the das.
Is to causative. Yeah. Okay. Good.
What kind of das was there was Eitzah das? Tova, no different Tova or something.
Well, Eitzah das Tova. Should it be chachma? I don't know.
Chachma is basic, straight knowledge, and das is understanding one chachma from the other.
And by the way, there may be a difference between das and deya. There may be a difference between das and deya. Okay, let's continue. V'asher koyach bahem lamoy behechal hamelach. And also these boys, we wanted them to have enough strength to stand in the palace of the king. What do you mean to stand? So look at Rashi. Rashi says that means, Pershu Chazal explain, Sheyu Einsen Atzman. They would sort of force themselves. Min Haschoik, from laughter. Right? Sometimes you get people, okay, they know how to behave, but if something's a little bit funny, then all of a sudden, they can't control themselves anymore. They don't have the self-discipline. So one of the criteria that Nebuchadnezzar was looking for, people have to be controlled themselves from laughter. Or you ever go to, in Washington, you have the two guys that march back and forth with straight faces, they don't move, right? In London. So they have to be able to force themselves from laughter, umin hasicha, to control themselves from talking, umin hashena, and from sleep. Here, if you're going to have a guard, standing guard by Nebuchadnezzar, if after 30 minutes of hearing, some nonsense, some political protocol, he's going to fall asleep, he's not going to be able to do the job. And they have control over their physical functions. They may have to do 2-day shifts without going, to the Beis HaKisei. So that's also an important skill they need to have. Fine.
Such people existed.
Yeah,
Don't have them today.
That was today by
doctors. Go to medical school. You have to have.
They
People that stood in Times Square last night in the cold New Year's celebration
Right.
for 8 hours. That
Not
was
for
an
48 hours.
They found places.
I'll tell you afterwards. Anyway, Ulalamdam Sefer,
candidates are thing.
and to teach them Sefer. Now, what is Sefer? What do you mean Ulamdam Sefer? Say.
Reading the right.
And Ulashoin Kazdim. So the Malbim explains that Sefer is, they have to have the preparation to understand and to remember the language. Now there are sometimes people could learn the language, but they can't actually read the language. Right? You have people, they deal in business, they could speak any language, but they can't read it inside. So it's not enough to know the Lashon, but Ulalamdam Sefer, they have to actually be able to understand the language, innovating, and they read it. Ulashoin Kazdim. Now, Lashon Kazdim, the Malbim explains, means that this was a special way of communication in the king's palace. Right, the Gemara talks about this, that the politicians in the king's palace had a more sophisticated communicative ability. They spoke a type of language that others were not familiar with. What?
The King's English.
Yeah, right, the king's English. So this was something that these children would have to learn. Fine. Now, what are these kids going to eat? What are they going to eat? Cheerios, Wheaties, what are we going to feed them? Vayiman lohem hamelech. And the king would prepare. Now, very interesting. You would think that the chef would prepare, or some kind of minister would prepare. No, the king himself would prepare. Devar yom b'yomai, every single day, not a one-time thing. The king would set aside food every day. The king would prepare mipas bag hamelach. Now we look at the words pas bag hamelach, and we think it refers to bread. We think it refers to bread, but Rashi says it does not refer to bread. Pasbag means cooked dishes, because we're going to see that some people did not want to eat the pasbag, or we're going to see that the zaronim, the seeds, were referred to as pasbag. Now, seeds are not bread. Certainly, seeds are not bread. So pasbag just means the dishes of the king. Umiyein mishtav, and from his wine. Now, why was it so important that the king would prepare the food himself and the wine himself? Right? Because the Gemara tells us, Chamri v'reichani pikchem. Wine and fragrances make a person wise. And every season has appropriate foods that are particular to that season. Whether it's cold outside, when it's hot outside. There's certain types of foods that are appropriate to eat when it's cold outside. It helps you think better. Certain types of foods that are appropriate when it's hot outside. It helps you think better. So, the king himself, whatever the king himself was fed, that's the kind of food that he set aside for these boys. Okay, that's the way the...
Sadia learns that it's not the Melech himself.
Yeah, but it doesn't say Nebuchadnezzar here.
Yeah, the Malbim says it was the king, yeah?
Hamelech. He says Nebuchadnezzar
It
once.
says the king allotted.
Just like we had.
He prepared. Rashi says Lashon Hazmana.
Rashi says he himself.
Sadi says Yifka, he ordered it.
He ordered it. He allotted it.
No, so we're going to see. Rashi learns he prepared, and the Malbim also learns this is an important thing. This was the king himself prepared the food, and this is a critical thing, at least according to the Malbim. What? He gave an order.
Rabbi, can I ask a question here? At the beginning, the pasuk tells us that he took some of the kalim, and he brought the kalim beso tzarela. And then it completely goes asunder, and now it talks about bringing the kids and giving all the food. What happened to the kalim? That he didn't do anything with them?
The story continues.
He put them in the treasury. He put them in the treasury. Now, is he going to use them like Belshazzar later uses them? No, but this is really the beginning of his downfall. His taking the kalim is the beginning of his downfall. He doesn't actually use them, but his grandson will use them, and that's the beginning of the end, really.
The question is, why is he doing this? Why is he feeding the kids exactly, what he's eating?
Because he wants... Look,
I know this is what I think it's going to explain.
No, it is explaining it. He specifically wants Jewish children, royal children, and officers to serve him, to be his advisors, to be his ministers, and therefore he's dependent on their intellectual prowess, and therefore he wanted to prepare specific foods to enhance their ability to be effective in their role.
In his
palace,
in his big picture, in his scheme of things, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
he's control. This is a controlled experiment he's running.
No,
he's giving him food. He wants
the best talent to work for him directly in his inner court. That's all.
and making sure that the food that they eat is good for their brains.
Yeah, and we're going to see he's going to. Yeah, it is somewhat of an experiment because he's going to make He's going to do this for 3 years and see, who's going to emerge as the best candidates for these positions. Okay,
so he knows the Jews have brains, so
they're his guinea pigs.
Yeah. So he gives the food, umiyain mishtav, and from the wine that he drinks, ulegadlam, and he's going to raise them shanim shalosh, 3 years, umiktsasam, and then some of these boys. In other words, he's going to do this to many, many boys, so that some of them, yamdu l'fnei hamelech, eventually will be able to stand before the king. In other words, let's say he took 100 kids, and he's giving them all, allowing them to go through this regimen. Echad mineyav, like the Gemara says, 100, 1,000 enter l'mikra, 100 enter l'talmud, 10, and one emerge. So,
he had American Idol, and he had Nebuchadnezzar's idol.
Yeah, something like that. Umiktsasam also could mean...
That's if they give kosher food.
Rav Sadia Gaon points out, Umiktsasam means at the end. In other words, Umiktsasam, and at the end of the 3 years, Yamdu l'fnei hamelech. Okay. Now, Vayihi bahem ibnei Yehuda. There was among these boys from the children of Yehuda. Now, Rav Sadia Gaon writes, these specifically were the descendants of Chizkiyahu. Because Rav Sadia Gaon points out that Yeshaya Hanavi, right? You wanted to learn Yeshaya, right? So Yeshaya Hanavi gave a nevuah to Chizkiyahu that from your children will serve in the royal court of Bavel. So this is the fruition of the nevuah of Yeshaya, where Yeshaya told Chizkiyahu, by the way, how are Yeshaya and Chizkiyahu related? Right, Yeshayahu was Chizkiyahu's father-in-law. Chizkiyahu married Yeshayahu's daughter.
Yeah, they're not mother.
Right? Chizkiyahu married Yeshayahu's daughter. And eventually who came? Menashe, right? But in any event, Yeshaya tells Chizkiyahu, your descendants will be in the court of Bavel. And who are these descendants? These boys, Mivnei Yehuda. Now the Malbim points out a very important thing. First, let's see who they were. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Now, this is my pet peeve. You ready for this?
There must have been more boys than 3, right?
No, among the Jewish boys, there were some from the Yehuda.
Right.
There's no such word as Daniel. There's no name Daniel.
So Hananiah. Is it a one name?
No.
So Kef Katan, it's like they go together.
So what does it say here?
It says
Dani
Daniel
Yale. It's not Dani Ale, it's Dani Yale.
Daniel, Kanacham.
So I call you Yale.
I've been called worse, but okay.
Daniel?
No. Look, the Tzere is under the Yud, no?
Sefer is under the Yud.
There's a dogesh in the yod. That's what the difference out here.
The English translation is more accurate, Daniel.
Anyway, enough with that. But the Malbim points out that he wants to argue on the Ralbag. The Ralbag says the fact that it says Vayhi Bahem mi b'nei Yehuda, that implies that all these four were from Bnei Yehuda, and they didn't have better yichus than that. But the Malbim points out from an individual who the Malbim is a very big proponent of, and this is the Mahari. The Mahari wrote a very important Sefer on Chumash.
The 10 Shvutim was already...
And Daniel, he says, was a descendant of David HaMelech. Okay, there's a dispute about that, but that's the opinion of the Malbim and the Mahari, not like the Ralbag. Okay, so these were the four individuals from Bnei Yehuda that were in the court among these Yeladim that Nebuchadnezzar took. Okay. Vayasem lahem sar hasarisim shemos. So the sar hasarisim gave them names. Now, what is a saris? Aside from the fact that a saris means an officer, but saris specifically means that they were sarisim. They were impotent, right? The king would sterilize them so they would not be able to have children, so that they would be able to serve him in their court. They're in English an eunuch, E-N-U-C-H, right? So often these sarisim would rename their servants as a way to perpetuate their own name, as if they're karei shem to these people. So he changed the name of these four boys. Vayasem Daniel Belt Shatzar. He called Daniel Belshazzar. Now, what does Belshazzar mean? Belshazzar, says the Malbim. First, the Malbim points out that the Sarisim, the Sar HaSarisim, did not change anyone else's name. There were perhaps hundreds of boys there. He didn't change anyone else's name. It was because of the special character and personality of these four boys that he gave them special names. And he saw a lot of promise and potential in these boys. The same way Nebuchadnezzar changed Tzidkiyahu's name, right? Does anybody know what Tzidkiyahu's name was in the beginning? Matanya. Nebuchadnezzar changed his name to Tzidkiyahu. So therefore, of all these four boys, the one that the Sar HaSarisim saw the most promise in was Daniel, and therefore he called him Belshazzar. What's Belshazzar? Belshazzar was the name of Nebuchadnezzar's god. His name was Baal.
The Tzilas David says, Olai Amila.
Who says that? The what?
Tzilas David.
Yes, in Tzilas David said Belshazzar. Maybe it's some kind of Chaldean translation of Daniel. But the Malbim says it was the name of Nebuchadnezzar's god. And the Sefer Daniel himself says, right? Rashi also says, thank you. Al Shem Avodas Kachavim Shel Bava Shekroya Bel. Right? The name of the Babylonian idol was Bel.
Any relation to Baal?
If you look in Perek Dalet in Daniel, Pasuk Hey, Dalet Hey, it says explicitly, Vi'ad acharein al kadamai Daniel dishmei Belshazzar kishem Elokai. So it says explicitly, Daniel, the name Belshazzar was the name of Babel's god.
Rashi says Shatzar means chachma.
And Shatzar is a lashon of chachma. Baal is a lashon of avodah zarah, and Shatzar is a lashon of chachma. Take a look at Rav Sadigan. Rav Sadigan has a very interesting explanation over here. Baal is avodah zarah. Tash means to hide, to flee. Yeah? And Otsar is treasure. So in other words, all the treasures of Bavel were hidden in this individual. So Baal is a lashon of avodah zarah. Tash means to store away. And Otsar. Okay. So in other words, he was the guardian of the treasures of Bavel. In other words, their god or which they saw this godly ability in Daniel, was the guardian of the treasures of Babel. Sadi Gaon says Hananiah means God was gracious to him. And the Sadi Gaon goes on to explain all of these other names, Shadrach, Meshach, Aved-Nego. And he wants to say Avad-Nego is Eved Nevo. Nevo is also a name of their idol. But others just say that these other three names do not have specific connotations. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.